Welcome, folks. I'm the Captain, Ross Memphis Pambrun, and with me, as always, my friend, the President Lawrence Gervais. We're broadcasting from Calgary in Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, which is part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We would also like to acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda, with whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. We would also like to say thank you to our First Nation friends, to the Métis settlements, and to our Métis brothers and sisters and families. We would also like to give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for the time she allows us to be here and share her bounty. And now, folks, let's get the wheel squeaking. Lawrence, the President Gervais. Here we are again, and we have managed, with much of the rest of all of Alberta, and everybody seemingly quite north of the 49th parallel, to have managed to get through the deep freeze. Not to suggest that this may be the last one we experience this winter, and let's hope by the good grace of our good Lord, and hopefully the getting past our understanding of climate change and our work towards it, though I prefer not to go through too many more of how cold minus 40 is. The only good thing about it is that when I have conversations with people down in the US, I can say to them, minus 40 is the same for you as it is for me. Real cold.
Well, not really, because don't they do Fahrenheit down there? So minus 40 is a different story.
Yes, except in minus 40 at Fahrenheit and at Celsius is the same. That's that one spot where the graph, as they correlate down, when they hit minus 40, that's the same.
Right. So this is why you work at NASA then, not myself. So.
Yeah. There is a calculation that you can do. I'm not going to lie to you. I've probably looked at it 100 times, and I've done it probably 5 of those times, and it does work. Yeah. I just sort of say I think I like it around 82. That's the best answer I could give. But I do know when people want to know, well, how cold is it up there? Well, you know how cold it is when it's minus 40? Well, they've experienced it. Yeah, it's that cold right now. That's what it is in February. Right. So, which is one of the things I wanted to throw out at you for our weekly discussion here on the Squeaky Wheel. And thank you to all of our subscribers. Thank you to everybody who clicks on that little red box in their YouTube video to say, I want to participate. I want to make sure people are aware that I'm listening. To all of our YouTube subscribers and to all of you who email me at tsw@métis3.org. Here, Ross and Lawrence always appreciate the conversation. Lawrence, the minus 40. Now, down in the US, as far down as Houston, the power outages, the struggles, the climate change, the effect that Mother Earth is inflicting on us, even out in Vancouver, where every time I'm out west, I think to myself, why don't I live here? Well, the cold, rainy days, I guess that's probably one of them. But the other one being, look at them. They're being beat up right now. And if they even get a sniff of snow, there's car crashes all day long.
Yeah. I mean, somebody who lived there, I think one time we had 20 solid days of just rain, like when you woke up to when you went to bed. And then it just didn't stop, right? And it was a record, right? So imagine 20 days just straight rain during the winter. But yeah, the difference between there is that it's such a wet air that you breathe it in and your body gets really cold. I'd rather be minus 40 in the prairies and the sun's shining on me than the cold that they have in Vancouver.
And you're absolutely right. I guess that's why the capote, the jacket, the Hudson's Bay jacket always worked. At the end of the day, if you can wrap yourself up in a little bit more, you're going to get through it. But that wet cold,
yeah,
like you mentioned, you just can't get away from it. It just chills right to the bone.
Yeah. And you tend to want to not get in that depressive state over there because it's just gray. You don't see the sun either. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Oh, what a struggle. Now, before we jump into, I know you had a couple of topics that are actually pretty big, heavy hitters that we need to have conversations about. Valentine's Day. I wonder if it saved a few guys a few dollars or a few ladies a few dollars because A, pandemic, you can't really go out too much, though the allowance had just opened up that we could finally go to our favorite restaurants. They were getting some capacity. Thank goodness for those individuals who are responsible enough to manage the economics of their business with sadly only 25% capacity. But thank you to all those people. But how many fellas, how many ladies saved a few dollars because they just said, it's too cold. It's just not worth the drive. Lawrence, how much goodwill was there on the wife's
well, no, I mean,
front of the table?
That was great. I mean, having two kids too, and they're one of their first big Valentine's too was kind of special. And they got presents again, and
yeah.
But this time it's you try to teach them about love and all that good stuff. But yeah, it was an interesting Valentine's for me, and being locked indoors, you're not able to really venture out as best you can, right? But it's just the nature of the game. As long as you have it here and we're around each other all the time, and expressing love for one another, and that's the most important thing.
I absolutely think that's the most important thing. It was a lot of times a lot of people would say to me, they're like, well, we really don't celebrate Valentine's Day. We celebrate every day. I'm not dismissing that, but I also understand, just like there's a Christmas, just like there's a family day, just like there's a Valentine's Day, just like we have Thanksgiving, it's okay to just make that person feel that they're the center of attention, even just for a short spell. At the end of the day, it isn't all about thousands of dollars being spent and all of the flowers. But I do think that it's easy in order for us to share with each other. My favorite time, though, this would be probably, there's that time of the year when you're in school that was the most stressful, was when you had to provide Valentine's cards to all of the rest of the kids in your class. The best way to do it was that you had one for everybody. Yeah. But that was, as you got a little older, well, you had to make sure that you were only giving the Valentines to the ones that you really wanted them to know they were getting a Valentine's. We should still go back to this. At the end of the day, what we probably should be doing is everybody we know, we should be sending them a Valentine. How good would that feel?
Yeah. I mean, we all just had crafts at home and just made hearts all day and then gave them to your friends, eventually, we wait till Stampede and just hand them out. There's your friend. And
maybe that's actually going to be, listeners, all of you out there, when you get the opportunity, I want you to email Lawrence. You can email him here at tsw@métis3.org, telling him that this Stampede, you want a handmade from the president Valentine's card. When he sees you, he should be handing one over your way. Lawrence, I'm hoping somebody bites on that one, and that's our request that comes in for the day.
Well, yeah, the wife may not like it, but that's our life, right? Just being friendly and spreading the love. So, I think maybe I want to bring up this, and I know we jump around quite a bit, and people are going, whoa, right? It's like a merry-go-round, but harvesting for Métis Nation of Alberta. Now, I finally did the deed and sent in my application, and hopefully it gets approved. But, I do have some ancestry down here in that would qualify me. What's pretty sad is some of those out of provinces historical people aren't able to actually achieve that status, right? So, as Métis Nation of Alberta members, we kind of go, well, we kind of want to accept them all, right? But at some point in time, the government of Alberta has kind of laid their terms on who is recognized as a harvester, who has that inherent right to the land, right? And we have a different viewing point at the Métis Nation of Alberta, and it took years to come to some sort of compromise, right? Whether that's good enough right now, it probably isn't for some of our members. For a good portion, they are able to sustain their activity as a harvester, but that it is always the big question, why not just for all of our members? And that's something that we want as Métis Nation of Alberta members. But currently in the current framework we have, it doesn't allow that to happen, right?
Well, I think that's actually, there's an important distinction there. And I think from what I'm picking up too, because we've had a little bit of conversation regarding the harvesting, and I received my harvesting card, and I'm allowed to harvest for sustainability in A, B, C, and D area. And they provide all that information. To me, if you want to be a part of the conversation, apply. Whether or not you're going out there to enact that inherent right that the nation has created in a relationship with the provincial government, if you want to be in the conversation, make sure you do that application. Mm-hmm. And I know that they're even trying to work at creating funding opportunities for the individuals in order to support them if this is in the different aspects of harvesting that they may want to approach, whether it be the fishing, whether it be the hunting, whether it be the assistance in butchering. But I think it's important that people connect with the Métis community, with the Métis Nation of Alberta by applying for this.
Yeah. And I agree. And, I stand by the province's, negotiations in terms of their harvesting agreement. We do have Bob Montgomery, who represents Region 3, to sit at that level. And that's the process that, I support. We get into questions of, people wanting to be a part at that table. And that's the most, the most frustrating part currently is, are we being heard? Why isn't things changed? Why is the government sort of implementing these policies still, right? And I always think there has to be further negotiation and further communication with, or future engagement with our community, especially in Region 3.
Just like a constitution, and just like the ones sort of that we're trying to work on developing now, it's always being reevaluated. I think just because decisions are made doesn't mean that they shouldn't be revisited. I think that's a healthy point in any constitution.
Yeah, but what my worry is as a leader down here is we already have these agreements and frameworks with Alberta government, and we move into the constitution or a new self-government that kind of abolishes those, original agreements. And where is our inherent right going to come from after that? Like, that's a concern for a lot of people. Is our, even our sustainable core funding that we get from the government of Alberta, where is that going to happen once we become a self-government?
Right. Who's going to be managing those questions? Where are the dollars going to come from? Mm-hmm. And who's responsible for those dollars and responsible for managing that practice?
Yeah. And those two are just examples, but we have housing, we have employment and training, we have other agreements.
Right.
What happens when we become our own self-government? Otipimisiwak is the term they're using, right?
Well, and I think that's important that we start answering those questions now. And that's why, again, a lot of people want to see change happen. They want to see change happen very quickly. But again, there are a lot of times, they may be missing are they counseling or being counseled on the side of what's going to happen when it comes to, like you said, Métis housing? What's going to be there for the support programs when it comes to our youth, our continuing to manage or monitor our elders within our community? If we don't have strategies in place, and there's not a lot of framework out there.
No.
And if we looked at the federal framework, well, look at some of the things that we struggle with all the time. Who all of a sudden made it seem like it was such a great idea to throw how much $300 million at a We campaign that all of a sudden just came crashing down all around everybody, and everybody wanted to blame somebody else. And at the end of the day, Trudeau just sort of said, I guess that kind of got away from us.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you put things out to tender and only one charity applies, and that's the one you approve, right?
Yeah.
When there's, thousands of them in this country that could probably.
So we should just find those ones where there's only one group applying, and the squeaky wheel is going to be the second one applying.
Yeah.
And let's try and get ourselves into that conversation, because I'm quite confident we could have done a better job at negotiating how that dollars were being spent. When sadly, all of the people that it was there to support and all the education and the awareness sure did seem to get spent, just all of a sudden came crashing down.
Well, I mean, the whole aspect of youth and employment and volunteerism, I mean, it was around that time, right? And they really wanted to exercise that change amongst our young people, but you're not showing them a very good example later on when you starts to crumble. Yeah.
And I guess they just look at it and go, oh, that's all right. The taxpayers will cover that.
Yeah. What does the young people that participated in that think, right?
Yeah. The, and I know we need to get to this because we need to have this conversation, whether or not I understand people are, we're all tired of the conversation about the vaccines, but what have you heard when it comes to what's happening within the MNA?
Well, I mean, I'm very hypercritical about, where people kind of position the Métis, or they're not sure who we are, or they stand around and him and haw, or they go to another Indigenous community and ask them. But I'm always, certain that if they went to Google, opened it up, and hit Métis Calgary, they would see our website. And I'm pretty confident that would happen, right? Now, the question of where we live is always on everybody's minds. They think we either live on a rock or we live underground. But, we live in urban centers. We're not confined to reserves. There are members that live there. There are members that live on the settlements. But the majority of us live in cities and towns across Alberta, right? So, and that might be a problem for them to find. But most of the time you have a local that's in a town, or you have a regional office. And then in Edmonton's case, you got the provincial office there too, right? So we're not that hard to not find. And in terms of bringing us in for a meeting, that's another case too for us to be engaged, because if you really want to hit the urban Indigenous community and we're the majority of that population that's in there, well, then you would probably confer or want to consult with the Métis Nation. And especially for the vaccine rollout, because we can actually pinpoint who's above age, where they live, where the contact info is, and we have all that stuff already in place, right? But when they bypass us and just depend on, another agency downtown to locate all the Métis, it ain't going to happen. Yeah.
I think you look at the issues that are happening within our province right now and the fighting that's happening amongst the 911 responders and the municipalities not wanting to give that up. I think too often we rely on our government saying, well, I think we have all the information we're going to need. Okay, but why are we not engaging with the groups themselves and verifying, with what information is allowable through the Freedom of Information and Protection and such. But if they were to say to us, who within your agency, who within your citizenship, for example, is over 75 or lives within the urban areas or in the rural areas, so that they can be a part, or we can be a part of the conversation saying, we're willing to follow a lot of the recommendations of the federal, the provincial guidelines of who should be receiving the vaccine, but coordinate with us.
Yeah. And I look at it this way, we have Treaty 7 chiefs and Blackfoot Confederacy chiefs, and that's great. But, if you look at Calgary specifically, I'm the only elected Indigenous member of an urban center, right? And they're not engaging with this elected official. Well, of course I'm going to have a problem with that, right? Because, I do lead in a certain example, and I take self-interest very personal because it's part of the oath, and I work for the nation, and that's whom I advocate for. So if we're systemically being left out of a process such as vaccine rollout, well, then of course I'm going to be very vocal about that.
Well, and you know me, I'm often sometimes the first to tease you because I don't approach social media or have to the same way. But you represent a lot of people who are elected. You're connected to a lot of people through your social media. A lot of people come to you and say, well, what's happening? Mm-hmm. Well, I agree. If the province, for the number of people that you represent within the Region 3 larger area, I agree. Why wouldn't somebody have you at that table to answer, to even just be aware of all of the conversations?
Yes.
It's not that I know you're not trying to necessarily change the conversation or steer it, but it's probably good for you to know everything that's going on.
That's right. And, and then of course, once you work with this region, then the other ones just kind of follow a lot quicker, right? And even in the other provinces, right? So
yeah, everybody will see the direction and the support.
Yeah.
Much like we look at every other province now and go, what are they doing?
Yeah, my parents are in a Métis seniors home in Lloyd, and now they're getting their vaccine. But, because they're the last one senior home in Lloyd to get it. And that's always like, okay, well, they are Indigenous, and this rollout is for Indigenous people. You have a home full of Métis seniors. Wouldn't that be the proper vehicle to be recognized and let's go get them a vaccine, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just mind-boggling to me sometimes.
Well, and I think it's important. So folks, when you also have those questions, make sure you go to our website, métis3.org. Make sure you go to the provincial one too. That will give a lot of different programs, the availability. Unfortunately, there is no simple answer as to what phase we're all in. Even I struggle with that, being in the profession that I often am when I'm not looking at satellites, as a first responder. Those groups, you think, well, this seems pretty straightforward. Wouldn't they receive it first? Not necessarily. Going back to my comment a number of squeaky wheels ago, where all of a sudden the province hadn't really thought about the paramedics receiving the vaccine. I don't know. They're under your jurisdiction. I don't know how you could miss that, but somebody did. Hopefully it's being rectified. But when those agencies become aware, just like you, if you can be brought to the table and go, hey, have you guys thought of this, with a big smile, hopefully that gets a few people interested in the conversation.
Yeah. And all I can say now is, if you're watching this, we are being engaged now. It's, I was the squeaky wheel for a little time there, but now we are moving forward. So we just
like, I can't remember who the rapper was who wore that big clock. You, Lawrence, should be wearing a great big squeaky wheel around your neck.
Right.
When you go to meetings.
Right. Flavor
that
Flav
way they're going to know. That's going to be your call sign of who the squeaky wheel is in the room. That's going to be what makes you stand out.
This is how urban I am, Ross. I know who Flavor Flav is, right?
Oh, that's right. Sorry. I knew if you gave me, it was going to take a little bit of time. Flavor Flav. Okay, that's right. But in your case, yes, instead of them looking at that in the bit of the gray that's in that beard there, what they're going to see is a squeaky wheel. And I want it to be made completely out of iron. So it'll probably weigh about 30 to 40 pounds. But if you wear that, it's going to gather attention.
Well, this is my 90-day beard, right? So I'm halfway through it. So just look forward to the future. The end of March, it'll be big. And
is that what you're doing? See, I'm doing a 30-day yoga challenge, but I see you've taken a very different approach.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it is working for you. So, I guess in order to segue a little bit and continue steering the ship along the conversation about vaccines, a bit angry, Lawrence. I'm a bit frustrated. We say it every week about, folks, there are rules. I'm not saying we love them. I'm not saying they aren't hard. But recently in your neck of the woods, Airdrie, a couple who has tested positive. Now, again, this is all information that, the media is sort of releasing. So we have to take it with a bit of grain of salt, but apparently they tested positive, were just fined because they're out shopping.
Right. Yeah.
And same as there was a guy recently, I think he was trying to board a plane down east, and he was showing his hey, I'm negative document. And they said, well, but this document isn't correct. This is wrong. And then they verified he was actually positive. He's just trying to pass off fraudulent paperwork to say that he needed to travel, and he was positive. Maybe this is the rant part of the show that I wanted to express my frustration, but it is unbelievable. And it's very confusing. All of the different groups out there that, I don't knock the religious groups, but I understand where there are choir groups out there going, well, we can't sing, but yet the religious groups can sing. And I'm not too sure what the difference is. And then you look at those groups up in Edmonton who are having large mass gatherings. And they've been told not to. Is it that they don't believe the science, they don't understand the science, or they don't care?
Well, yeah. I mean, and I think that's probably what it is. It's that science, spiritual, thing that they think of. If my time is up, well, then my time is up, right? And, today is, well, I know this is going to air later, but today is Ash Wednesday, right? Eventually we become Ash, and that's the whole purpose of that certainly that ceremony, right? And there's a little value in that teaching for sure, right? But, people don't understand that this virus acts a little different. It's not about you, it's about other people.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah, that's true. I guess that's one of the important messages that you're hitting on, is that too often, to me, I would find it hard to accept the fact that my ignorance, my disrespect for following the rules ended up causing harm for somebody else.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not always harm for ourselves. It's harm for others.
Yeah. I mean, people are doubling their masks to protect themselves. Okay, well, great. But the whole exercise of masks is always to protect other people, right? It's not a foolproof system. If you're going to get it, you're going to get it. But, it's what you express out of your body that, other people are going to latch onto.
And I've been in a few of the conversations, and I know you've heard some of them too, with people when all of a sudden they get into some anti-mask stance. And I don't try to argue with those people too much.
No.
In the past it'd be, do you have any science behind anything you're saying? Do you have any proof? Do you have any supportive information? Do you even have a family member who could say why? Well, no, they heard it or they read it on some web page.
Yeah.
That's why I'm probably not going to talk to you about it.
And, it's not like I'm going to say this as a derogatory term, but, like I was an artist. I mean, see me there, right?
And I'm an artist. See their guitar there.
And what you're taught as an artist is that empathy. They call it emotional intelligence, right? And if your emotional intelligence is at a certain level, you begin to empathize. And usually you do it by viewing other people's stories. So if you go to the theater or you listen to music and it invokes that emotional response, you're building that emotional intelligence. So you become more empathetic at the end of the day. And I think for a lot of them, it's not saying they lack it or that trigger's not there, or maybe that they just don't have that understanding, or maybe they just think the government is going to control them, or they listen to what they see online too. And that's part of it, right? But I think having empathy for another person is what we're trying to express here. Just have it,
Yeah. And I wouldn't think it would have to be as learned, but if these people were just willing to be in the conversation and listen to some of the science, maybe spend more of your time trying to learn the science and understand that than going out of your way to fight and be so against it.
Yeah, and
maybe learn something.
And I look at because I've traveled to Europe, I've traveled to Asia, and I've done my thing there, and I see how those governments support the artists, and then I see how they do it here in North America, and it's a little bit different. They don't put that value, or even with this COVID happening, and there's 36 arts organizations right now trying to get more funding in their programs so they can train their students, because COVID right now, they're not able to house students in these 36 arts organizations. So I encourage everybody to at least talk to their MLAs about getting them some more support, because that's our empathetic model for the government. If you want to create change socially for people, that's where you should be investing your money, is in these arts organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's important for all these organizations. The big shout out to our little group for continuing to engage our seniors, the youth programs that we're continuing to develop. Folks, make sure that you connect with us, follow us on our Facebook page, follow us on all the social media. I know, Lawrence, I was mentioning to you, and thank you for reminding me, not this Friday, but Friday the 26th, I should be playing Keith's Hootenanny, which is a friend of mine who's in my band, the Renaissance Poets. He put this together for artists. And I've reached out to a number of Métis artists now and said, it's 1 hour, Fridays, usually from 7 to 8 p.m. That's pretty much when it is. And you jump on. Last week, I think there was about 90 people who were watching, or 90 sort of groups that were watching. And there's a way that you can put your name in. You're playing 3 songs. You're playing in front of people. It is a lot of fun. It's a great opportunity to just reconnect. And it's something, as you mentioned, for the artists to have a reason to practice and want to stay engaged. So I'll ask Jason when I get the chance next week. I'll fire it out hopefully on our Facebook page. And hopefully I can draw some of our listeners to want to connect with us or connect with me as I'm performing on the 26th. It's just an hour. It's a good time. And Lawrence, it's just a matter of time before I get that old Martin off the wall there for you. And the next thing you know, you're going to be singing a song.
Yeah. I mean, I play for my kids all the time, but yeah. I got into
this case, it feels the same.
Yeah. I got into playing these Frozen songs all the time. And I'm like, why am I playing this? Right?
Because they love it. And who doesn't want to hear their dad sing? There's no doubt in my mind. And you got a nice voice, Lawrence. And I know we've played together before. And I've always enjoyed it. So I think, Lawrence, that's our time.
Yep.
We covered a lot of topics here when it comes to the cold that we've been through, the struggles with the individuals who can't seem to figure out how to follow the rules. Thank you for the awareness of the vaccine rollout. The harvesting was excellent. It's something folks participate in. Look up on the provincial website and make sure you click that link. We're citizens. We're learning how to, what we're looking at for a potential in our own constitution and for self-government. This is how you connect. This is just one of the routes. So from the Squeaky Wheel, Lawrence, close us out.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Hit subscribe. We want to see this podcast progress. You know, right now we're very happy because it's all Métis and there's not a lot of content out there. So we should be getting thousands of followers. Maybe
That's
we'll
a very good point.
Yeah.
Tell your friends, folks. Make sure you click. It's important that you follow that hit that subscriber button. And again, email us, tsw@métis3.org. If you have any questions for Jason as to how things happen on the back end, if you want to know something from Lawrence and you just want to have a coffee with him, or if you have a question for me, Ross Memphis Pambrun, you go right ahead, you fire something off. And from Calgary, Alberta, folks, thank you for your time.